Started recording. Let me just make sure.
Okay, here we are, Chuck.
Hey, good morning to you. Good evening to me.
Yeah,
Halfway across the world. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Very good evening to you, Chuck.
Thank you. Thank you. So I thought maybe we should begin now to try to focus in on, because you've been talking to people in India, and I have a decent idea of parents and how they look at the situation with schooling and kids and all that stuff in India, because I spent so long there. But you've been sort of getting on the ground input from parents as they deal with COVID. So maybe the first thing is, maybe you should just sort of try to articulate or summarize what you think the single most pressing concern or issue that parents are facing, what that is, and then let's talk about it.
As usual, Chuck, the basic issue is that all of a sudden, for almost more than 16, 17 months now, the kids are at home. And parents are not used to this. Now, you've been here long enough to know that there is a certain section of parents who are used to this, whose kids really, don't go to school, or it doesn't matter. Now, you had seen our kids here who didn't go to school, but because you were around here for a lot of those times, there was a lot of inputs that they got from you, which was not very formal in that sense, but just because you were around. Even today, they talk about that influence. And even if they don't talk, Rina and I talk about the influence that your presence used to have on them. And I think that is one of the main things that can bring, that can be brought to the people. A lot of the, more upwardly mobile people here in India, they are not used to their children being at home. They are not used to themselves being at home, but the children being at home for, completely locked up with them, they're not used to. I have actually, to tell you very, very honestly and frankly, when our kids didn't go to school, some parents would come and tell us, how can you manage this? We send our children to school just to kind of get a bit of respite from them. When we used to have these discussions as to, what is the logic for, I would say there's no logic for sending to school, etc., because the school, all the education system has gone, is rotting. Well, one of the things that would always come back is this, that, well, don't you need some respite from the children? So I think that is one of the main issues, that people are not getting the respite that they need. Not everyone is conscious about that. Some people would talk about this, most people won't, but I think that's the truth, that a lot of parents need the children to be away from home for just to get that respite, which they have not got, and that leads to, I'm sure, a certain kind of friction or a certain kind of
so there's a real irony and
I just get that there's, I think, some noise in the background. Just get this noise to stop. I'm not. Okay, sorry.
I can't hear it. I can't hear it. The sort of tragic comedy irony of that is, when you think about the lockdown, the first thing, sort of everybody talks about is the impact on the children. But the truth is, I think you're absolutely right. The stress level, I see that here in California, in Los Angeles, that parents are, everybody wants, because children can be very challenging. Let's not be kidding ourselves about this, and that they're not accustomed to having the kids around. And many families, in India, and upper middle class India, as well as here in America, have two working parents trying to work from Zoom or doing whatever they have, the responsibilities they have as well. And all of a sudden you've got a 9-year-old, and an 11-year-old, doing whatever they're doing, and there's no time budgeted for it. There's no time budgeted for it. And the thing I think about the most, if I were to summarize my primary takeaway from India's upper middle class, is that it is stressed out. And this was pre-COVID. Yeah, on the street, I would just overhear conversation after conversation after conversation, where I'm stressed out was the theme of the conversation. So this is the picture that I'm having, in my own mind's eye, is you've got kids at home, one or both parents preoccupied and working, sort of with the baseline of stress anyway, kind of, tension in their own being. And now they've got these, children that they don't neither have the time budgeted for to deal with, nor this, the training, I guess, and the aptitude and innateness to kind of cope with that. So so this is like the therapy I used to do with families. I mentioned this in one of our conversations. I started up thinking, oh, I'll talk about the children, and then it switched to I'll talk with the parents, because that's really the issues. And that's the similar kind of thinking that I have now. That the first thing that to talk about is not about the kids, but because the kids are the byproduct of what's going on at home. But let's talk about the parents. So I have kind of, first of all, I wanted to every parent who hears this, you're not alone. This is not an easy problem to solve. And every parent, you and I saw you make mistakes. You didn't see me with my kids enough to see me make mistakes. We all make plenty of mistakes with our children, and that's the way it is. So this is especially difficult, and to have a little bit of tolerance and forgiveness and patience with your own self as you parent through this difficult time, because it is difficult. And the second thing I would say is begin to think about what it is that your children are going to face in the future. What's life going to be like in the 21st century for these people? We see lots of, there's a big global warming report that was released today, just terrifying. For example, you see a virus that's basically out of control, and who knows where that goes, and on and on. Governments that are more and more authoritarian, lots of stuff coming down the road. So the first thing I would say to parents listening to this is, in the midst of all this, to begin to reflect on what it is you're beginning to imagine for your child's future. And so I'm gonna give you sort of my 30-second response to that. It's not going to be that easy for your kids. My grandchildren, the children, they're not going to face a really easy time. It's going to be a difficult time in lots of ways. And so to cope with that, these kids need to have a deep resilience, the kind of resilience that you talked about in response to the Greens getting blown over. They have to have enormous moral courage to do the right thing. They need to maintain control of their lives, and not get in an economic situation where they're just working to make money to survive. They need to have control of their lives, and they need to be able to learn and problem solve as a dynamic in their life altogether. So if you can just buy that scenario for a minute, then and here you are, you're now, okay, that's what the kids need. Here's the mom and dad, and they're stressed out because, COVID's hit and they're not equipped. The very first thing that a parent needs to do is they need to become a little more centered, just slightly more centered, because kids are coming at you. They're just coming at you. God, gee whiz, they just do all this stuff. And you've got, I've got to get the budget ready for this meeting on the Thursday, and you've got all this stuff just like running through your head. And I've got to do these projections, and this report is due, and all that stuff. That because kids are unpredictable at home, and they have a very different agenda than a parent does, than an adult does. A kid's mind and a parent's mind are just like light years away in so many ways. That the more kind of receptive you are, the best parent I ever saw, Aruna Lasri, he's really the most talented parent I ever met in my life. And he was always so receptive to seeing his kids as they were and being forthright with them as he is. He didn't sort of like baby them. He was very authentic with them, but he was also deeply empathic and allowed them to approach him emotionally. So the first thing is, and you talked about practice, the years of practice that led to that resilience. The very first thing that I believe for myself, now I'm still a parent. I'm 69 years old. I'm still a parent. I'm a grandparent. The most important, and I'm still parenting. I'm still parenting my 38 and 33-year-old children who have children of their own, but I'm still parenting them. And what that calls for me is to be deeply centered as I can be, and as deeply calm as I can be, and really let them come to me so I hear them as they are, so that I can respond to them as I am. So here are parents, and they're stressed out. They're on the treadmill. They're on the mental treadmill. Got to solve this, got to fix this, got to respond to that. You know, you just listen to how your mind is spinning, trying to solve all these different problems. And they just kind of go in a circle. The first thing is to begin to imagine, to remember, to appreciate what it feels like to be at rest, to be centered. You know, the emptiness is a word that gets used a lot. Stillness is a word that gets used a lot. Just to begin to imagine what that's like to taste that. And I think that, to me, that is the primary fundamental skill parenting.
Yeah.
It's the ability to be receptive.
I heard you say, Chuck, couple of things very, very important immediately strikes me, and this is what most people miss out, and especially as the country has transitioned. You know, this particular country has transitioned into what it is. It used to be a certain different kind of a culture, and the culture change has come in. I mean, I have seen the culture change in my.
I saw it. I saw it in the 15 years I was there.
Yeah. So in that change, I think we have lost a lot of things which used to be there in the culture, and a lot of new stuff have come in. And what I heard you say, one of the most important things was be a little tolerant with your own self.
Yeah,
that was very important, because people talk about being taught. I mean, you went on to talk about being tolerant with the children, but how can you actually do that if you're not tolerant with your own self? Now, I think there is a risk of misunderstanding or not really understanding what we are talking about. So I want you to go a little more into this. This tolerant, everyone is tolerant with their own self. You know, they do their own shit and feel that, oh, this is great. I mean, but that's not the tolerance that you are talking about.
No. The tolerance I'm talking about. So I'm going to make a wild assertion. I'm going to assert that everybody experiences things like shame and self-doubt and anxiety and fear and rage. These are all kind of existentially baked into the human psyche. And we make plenty of mistakes. We're always trying to meet sort of what we imagine the social expectations for us. We're trying to sort of fit into the world, and we're trying to meet these expectations. And in the midst of that, we're having all these feelings that are subtle sometimes or profound other times. Tolerant of myself means I allow my ego, my personality, my thing that I've developed over my lifespan that, you know, I'm constantly thinking in and acting out of. I allow myself to sort of dispassionately witness it, because I woke up one day, I was 20 years old, and I went, oh my God, this is who I am. You know, I woke up out of a childhood and went, oh shit, what do I do now with this mess? You know, and it just got, you know, I just got dumped onto me. I mean, I just woke up to it. So I had as I've grown and changed over the decades, I had no alternative but to allow myself to be who I actually was, as imperfect as it was, as embarrassing as it was, as out of control as it was. And I witnessed that from this deeper place of sort of dispassion and tolerance. And that kind of that beginning perspective of recognition, of witnessing that, you know, because I can't judge it. I can't hate myself out of existence. I can't make myself be a better man by yelling at myself. It just doesn't work. I've tried it. I've tried it more than once. It doesn't work. But what I have learned does work is that as I witness myself, my sort of ego, my personality, as I witness myself with all of its flaws, it's the witnesser that actually is the key piece here. I become more aware of that witnesser. That thing is, which emptiness, stillness, whatever you want to call it, lots of words. That thing is really beautiful. And that's where, you know, the tolerance of me sort of begins to transition towards not self-love, but just love itself, where it just kind of, you know, it's part of nature. And so that's what I mean by tolerance.
That's a wonderful word, Shaf. I mean, so what I would like to pinpoint is how you use the term witness, which is an oft-used term in the spiritual circle, so to say,
Right.
but not always used in general, or in, let's say, psychological or psychiatrists don't always use
Oh
this
no,
term.
that's less true now. I mean, that's it's used now in psychological circles pretty. Yeah, I mean, a certain segment of it does it quite a bit.
Of course, the roots are, I mean, it came from more of the spiritual circle, I know, because
Oh yeah, absolutely.
there's in India,
Absolutely.
for example, every spiritual master talks about this term called Sakshi Bhav. Sakshi means witness, and Bhav means a state. So just they talk about being in this witnessing state. Now, why I'm stressing on this, you mentioned this so many times, is the fact that most people think that being tolerant with their own selves means tolerating whatever they are, wherever they are.
Yes,
But a witness is not tolerating.
Yeah.
I mean, witness is not judging. So tolerating is different from judging. So if you judge yourself and come to the conclusion that what you're doing is right, that is not tolerating. That is not witnessing. Witnessing is just, keeping yourself away from the judge. You're neither rejecting nor accepting. Accepting in the sense you're accepting, but not by being judgmental as it is right. So that is the state that you're talking about, because most people would say that, well, we are very tolerant with us. They would take this guidance from the great expert, white-skinned child psychologist from the United States of America and say that, oh, he has said that we have to be tolerant with whoever we are. And so, let's just do this tonight. And if they fly into rage with their children, they will say that, oh, that's who I am. And I am. But when you are flying in that rage, it's to be that, non-judgmental witnesses, not to approve of it, neither disapprove of it, right? There.
We see a lot of that sort of, yes, everything I think and feel is right, and and that's really self-indulgence. That's not witnessing, and there's a lot of self-indulgence that goes along, gets promoted, but there is a phase people go through where I mean, we can only see from the perspective we see from, and at some point this term of self-love or whatever only gets manifested through self-indulgence for a while. The key for that is, and if you notice it doesn't work. It doesn't create contentment. I mean, this is the, where's the flashlight that leads you? It is honesty. It is honesty about what really creates a sense of meaning and purpose and beauty in your life. If you're really honest with yourself, self-indulgence doesn't work. We all have tried it. You've tried it. I've tried it. We do it. I'm so great, or you should accept this. This is out of me, and I'm holy, or whatever it is. And we're all. I mean, none of us. We all go through all this whole process of screwing up all over the place. The witnessing it's a place. See, from whence I witness. It is who's watching me think. There's a watcher. There's a listener to my thought. I remember with Piku, when Piku was maybe 12. Piku was a Surab's son, very, very off the charts, brilliant kid, just so smart. And he spoke, 4 languages by the time he was 12 or something. So I asked him one day, I said, Piku, which language do you think in? He couldn't answer the question. At that point in his cognitive development, he didn't listen to himself think. He just was his thoughts. He had not yet developed the biochemistry and the physiology and the consciousness to witness himself thinking. If I ask him today, which language does he think in? He would answer that to me, because now he's 22 or whatever he is. He would answer that quite easily. I think in English or Hindi or Bangla or whatever it is. So that part of him that can now listen to how he thinks, that's the witness from which, when I talk about tolerance, that's the place from which tolerance, it just watches ourselves go through our life, and not, how do you frame this the right way? And I experience, and so what that does is I experience both the highs and lows of my personality, the shame, the anger, the joy, the happiness, the frustration. I experience all these different things, but I experience them from a place of witnessing them. When the Greens got blown over, you said, but I was okay. Now the party that put all that effort in, he was like, oh my God, I put all that effort in, but I was okay. The witness that sits beneath all that, it wasn't, it's still there.
Yeah.
So this is the perspective that I'm trying to at least just nudge people to to consider. As you deal with your children, the more you come from a witnessing place, that you can be receptive to them, that you can see them as they are. Because the other thing, the wonderful thing that happens with this is that we have all these subtle biases that are built into our psyche. We just see through the same, whatever lens we've got covered on. And they're just, and that's just a little teeny partial truth that we've got. The more we're able to witness our kids, we actually see them as they actually are. The good, the bad, the indifferent. We don't build big fantasies about how wonderful they are. We don't build big horror stories about how terrible they are. We see them as they are. We see them with a place of quietness and calmness and acceptance and recognition. If you can do any moments of those with your children, it is healing beyond anything that I can imagine. That's
few things that I could, real strong takeaways from. I don't know how long we want this to go on. Of course, what we've decided is to do shorter conversations. Of course, the way it's going, I really love it because there's deep stuff that we are able to unearth. And I sure think that if parents use this to really elevate their own selves, there's no greater service that we would have done other than, what we're doing. But still, since I don't know, you're the timekeeper and you want these things to be.
Yeah, I forgot. I have to check my watch.
You're influenced by India. So, but the key takeaways I heard you. One was the fact that just having this perspective for all parents, that what is happening in that moment is not all that is there to your child's life. I mean, you may be irritated at that point of time, but just to keep the perspective that the future is really long and they're going to face a lot of stuff. And especially all the more so, I mean, if you are worried about the pandemic and they're being at home and all that, this is just a context, what it's going to result in the long run. I mean, so they're going to face, your children are going to face a lot at times where you won't be there to really, mother them or really mollycoddle them or whatever or really be strong.
Disciplined. Yeah, right.
So have this perspective that, whatever is happening at that moment is not really the end of the world kind of thing. That is one important thing which I heard you say. And then as you have that perspective, the way you look at it is to be a little tolerant, very importantly, on your own self. Most people would say, be a lot tolerant with the children, accept them. I mean, you talked about it, accept them as they are, etc. But that comes next. You can only do that if you are tolerant with your own self. Otherwise, you are just not exuding or communicating this tolerance or acceptance, which you want them to have that quality. So, and then you clearly differentiate it between self-indulgence and this tolerance, because that's the part I worry about. I mean, most parents who do not have a committed psycho-spiritual path that they are following, practice that they are following every day. If you don't do that, I know it for myself, I know it for everyone. If you don't have a regular practice, in India we call it sadhana. So if you don't have that charted out, it's not going to work easily. And most people will translate self-tolerance into self-indulgence and be there.
Yeah.
So I think what you have pinpointed that how to differentiate, that you self-indulge and you will not be content. It will not work. And that's the key to differentiating these. And then I think we really need a few more sessions to delve deeper into this witnessing ability. It is not, I mean, we can talk about it, but I know it has come to you. I mean, that's become a quality in you. And you can tell me whether it's a quality in me or not, but those do not happen overnight. It's just, and will require more sessions.
Yep. But
yeah.
and the sessions have this one goal with most people, because I work with people who are sort of at the beginning stages of a sort of a spiritual quest, that as you start, any step in a more honest direction within yourself is healthy, even if it's a little one. I just see, because you're trying to fall in love with the reality of your own being, and even learning that takes time. It's right there inherent in you. So what I see is, I see people take baby steps for a while, then all of a sudden they take a leap upwards. Any step that's more honest, more courageous, more moral, more joyous, more centered, more tolerant, more witnessing, more centered, that's the good thing.
Yeah. But the one thing I'm reminded of, Chuck, when you say this is, for the audience. I mean, I remember Ken mentioning this in one of the conferences. Ken is one of the great integral thinkers, for people who don't know, whose influence on both Chuck's and my life is very profound. So he mentioned once about meditation, and he said that it's very important people learn to do very short meditations.
Yes.
Because typically meditation is taught in a manner where you think it has to be a long, 20-minute or 1 hour or 2 hours affairs. But he talks about just a 30-second meditation.
Yes.
That's, and when I hear you talk about baby steps, just
this morning, I'm rebuilding a deck in the backyard. It took me longer than I had a golf tee time. I had to rush to get, take a shower. I didn't have long to meditate. I like to meditate for 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes at night. I only had about 5 minutes to meditate. But the 5 minutes, it's a whole lot different from none at all.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Because something happens when you don't give yourself a lot of time. You actually sometimes can kind of sink in and drop into focus more quickly.
In India, in every temple, as you enter every temple, we have this bell. This.
Oh, right.
This bell.
Right.
Well, the reason is that as you're entering, ring that bell. Now, people don't do this. They ring the bell and rush. They think that's a regimen that has to be done. But the logic was that you ring the bell because the bell sound kind of slowly dies down.
It does.
You're supposed to wait and listen to that sound dying down.
Yeah.
That's an example of a very, very, very short, small meditation. You're just getting centered before you go on to the temple and do your darshan or your prayer or puja or whatever. But you have to get centered before that. Now, these are things that are there in this country, but people just don't get it, and they've been kind of made obsolete or corrupted in so many different ways.
Okay. Last point, and then we should stop because this is getting long. Yes, the other thing I saw in upper middle class and more affluent and upperly mobile Indians is they had become much more westernized. The business school paradigm had seeped into their value system. And the one thing that I would say is, as we hit 7.5 billion people, we have catastrophic climate change. Today's report was just terrifying. That whole mindset, produce more, consume more, grow GDP, that mindset is coming to us either a devastating end, or we're going to drop it and recenter our values on something much more human about life itself. And so that as you're sort of listening to this, and I'm an MBA from UCLA, I'm westernized, that some of what we have held on to starts falling away. Oh, and by the way, and then the last thing, and I have a bowl, a singing bowl. I hit it every morning, every time. Actually, I don't do it at night because it's near my wife's when she's sleeping and I don't want to wake her up. But I do it and I listen to it. Is that beautiful sound just. All right. Good night,
So
buddy.
so the format that we're doing, Chuck, just to conclude this, is we would like the audience, these are first 1 or 2 sessions
Yes.
where we are doing it on our own. But maybe after a couple of sessions like this, we will put this on YouTube so that people can first look at this. Then they get a sense of where we are trying to go with this. And then we would like people to actually submit their comments and their questions. And in the
Sure.
maybe from the 3rd session, this would probably be the first one. We did a couple of sessions before this, which was more kind of getting people to get to know us a little better. But this I would say is the first focus session addressing
Right.
the issue that parents are facing with their children in this lockdown in India. That's we want to do about 12 sessions like these as a kind of structured program. And 2 of these we will do this way, and then we would invite people's questions and then get people to attend these sessions live as we are doing this. And then
Oh, that would be fabulous.
Questions. Does
And
the
so-
format sound good?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. The other thing is parents think about this and respond to it. I mean, you and I speak from a certain kind of perspective and level, and they may have much more nitty gritty daily kind of, things that they want to ask about. Do that. The more tangible, the better.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
right. See ya.
Good.
Bye.